The loudest voice in the room is rarely the smartest one. It is usually the most threatened one. And in most organizations, nobody says that out loud, because the loudest voice is also the one that decides who gets hurt next. We've all been in that meeting. Most of us said nothing. Some of us tried to push back and got flattened. And a few of us, if we are honest, have been that loud person ourselves. Today I want to pull that dynamic apart, because it's not really about ego, even though it looks like it. It runs deeper than that, and understanding it is the difference between building a culture where the best ideas win and building one where the most dominant personality does. Let me start with a small story. A few weeks ago, I got into a discussion on a public forum. Someone asked a technical question about website security, a legitimate question, asked in good faith. I gave a precise answer. Someone else showed up, added a long, nuanced-sounding response that ultimately argued both sides and committed to nothing. I pushed back with specifics. They responded with, "I sense you're one of those people who thinks they are always right and doesn't consider the impact of alternatives." It felt like he was talking about alternative facts, right? No counter-argument, no technical substance, just an attack on my character wrapped in the language of empathy. And then, and this is the part that matters, they added, "That is precisely the response I expected from you. Take care." And exited. Now, I could have taken that personally, but I've seen this pattern too many times to be surprised by it. The person asking the original question never got a cleaner answer. They got a muddier threat and a credibility dispute they didn't ask for. That's the collateral damage nobody talks about. The person who came in with a genuine problem walked away with less clarity than they arrived with, because someone else in the room had a position to protect. This is not about ego. It's about status economics. I want to push back on the comfortable explanation. We love to say, it is just ego. It makes the problem sound like a personality flaw, something confined to difficult individuals who just need to be managed. But that's not precise enough to be useful. What you're actually watching is rational behavior in a system that rewards visibility over accuracy. In most organizational environments, being seen as someone who knows things matters more than actually knowing things. The two often overlap, but not always. And when they diverge, what people protect is not the truth. They protect the perception. That external consultant I mentioned in the forum story, I knew exactly what he was doing. And years before that, I watched the same pattern play out in a much higher stakes environment. Here's a real story. I was brought into a large international investment bank as a subject matter expert. That expertise was explicitly the reason I was hired. My mandate was clear, and in a critical strategy meeting, I laid out a vision for how the business we were responsible for should move forward. A more modern approach, aligned with where the market was heading and capable of keeping up with the competition. The response came immediately. Not with data, not with a counter-proposal, but with a wall of certainty. "This will never work. Way too expensive. Too difficult. I've worked in this industry for X years and I know this doesn't work, period." No evidence, no analysis, just the weight of claimed experience delivered with absolute conviction. And the room listened. The other person's contract was extended. I was positioned as the enthusiastic newcomer who didn't yet understand how things really worked. Not a newcomer to the topic, a newcomer to that company. The distinction was conveniently ignored. The question the room should have been asking was, will this approach keep us competitive? The question the room was actually answering was, whose position do we protect? The investment bank no longer exists in the form it did then, and I let you draw your own conclusions. Let's talk about why the loudest voice wins and why that's a system problem. The uncomfortable truth is that loud, confident, substance-free communication works. Not always, not forever, but often enough to shape decisions, extend contracts, and close off better options. And it works because of how most groups process uncertainty. When nobody in the room is fully confident they understand the problem, the person who sounds most certain fills the vacuum. Certainty is cognitively cheap. It asks nothing of the listener. Analysis is expensive. It requires engagement, evaluation, and the risk of being wrong yourself. So groups default to certainty, especially under time pressure, political pressure, or when the stakes feel high. The loudest voice doesn't just win because it's loud. It wins because the alternative, thinking carefully, is much harder. This is not criticism of intelligence, it's a description of a system, and the people who abuse it know they're abusing it. The performance of certainty is deliberate. The vagueness of the pushback, this won't work, it's too expensive, I've been in this industry for decades, is deliberately unverifiable. You can't disprove a feeling. You can't argue with an assertion that doesn't commit to anything specific enough to be wrong. Now, let's talk about the people who say nothing. In the forum thread, dozens of people read the exchange. Most said nothing. Some of them, I'd wager, could see exactly what was happening, but staying silent is safe. Entering the dispute means picking a side, and picking a side means exposure. In the investment bank, there were people in that meeting who knew the critique was hollow. I could see it, but the political cost of challenging the established voice was higher than the professional cost of going along with a bad decision. So they stayed quiet. And here is where the real damage compounds. Because the loudest voice doesn't just win the argument in the room. They shape the perception of what expertise looks like to everyone watching. The bystanders learn that decisive-sounding dismissal is more effective than careful analysis. Some of them will use that lesson. And the pattern replicates. The person asking the genuine question in the forum, in the boardroom, in the strategy session, watches all of this and draws their own conclusion. That asking questions in public is dangerous because you might become the rope in someone else's tug of war. So what does winning the room actually mean? I want to leave you with a reframe. Winning the room is not the same as being right. And being right is not the same as contributing something useful. The question worth asking in every meeting, every discussion, every strategic conversation is not who won this exchange. It is, did the problem get clearer or muddier? If the person with the best answer walked away dismissed, and the person with the loudest pushback walked away validated, the room didn't produce good thinking. It produced a social outcome dressed as a professional one. For leaders, this means your job is not to have the best answer. It's to build an environment where the best answer can surface, even when it comes from someone new, someone quieter, someone who doesn't yet have the standing to override a louder voice. That means actively protecting precision over performance. It means asking, what's the actual evidence for that? Out loud. in the room even when the atmosphere makes it uncomfortable. It means noticing when the conflict dismissal contains no falsifiable claim and naming that. And for the rest of us, the ones who see what's happening and say nothing, there's a cost to that too. The original question stays unanswered. The bad decision moves forward, and the system that rewards noise over substance gets one more round of confirmation that it works. The loudest voice in the room is usually protecting something, a contract, a reputation, a comfortable position that a better idea would threaten. That's not ego. That's a rational response to a system that hasn't learned to distinguish between confidence and competence. The question is whether you're going to keep rewarding that system or start building a different one. I'm Andre Daus. This has been Iconoclast Insights. If this episode made you think of a specific room you've been in, I'd be curious to hear more about it. Find me on LinkedIn. Until next time, think before you act. And when someone tells you something won't work, ask them to prove it. See you next week.